Our next speaker is new, not representing any of the years, brand new to this conference. And Robert Kraft, one time, bought her fiancé a birthday dinner after she had offered him a frosé at a restaurant in Boston. So, everyone, please welcome Kelsey.
Okay, so I'm going to start a little bit with a quick career timeline of what I've been doing the past couple years in sports to give some context to the projects we're going to talk through, and then we'll get into the good stuff. So, hello, good morning. I'm Kelsey McDonald. I currently work as the Director of Ticketing, Technology, and Operations at a company called Two Circles. If you're not familiar, it's a sports media agency located all over the world. It started in the UK about a decade ago and has since grown like crazy. We have a couple offices here in North America, in Australia, and I'm currently at the New York one. Prior to that, I did a couple of years across various sports entities. So I started at the Kraft Analytics Group. I'm going to stand over here. In 2019 as a data scientist. So that's where I first fell in love with ticketing data and a lot of what we're going to talk about later today. After that, I spent some time at the league, at the NBA, dealing with player data. So got to work with some really great engineers there, helping get all the data from the court, or in the NBA 2K case, from the game, onto the app and the website so people like fans like us could enjoy it. And then most recently, I was at a company called BSE Global. It is the owner of many things, the Nets, the Liberty, and the Barclays Center. So from a data perspective, it was amazing. We had all kinds of fun data to play with and see if you go to a Justin Bieber concert, are you likely to go to a Liberty game? I will not spoil that with the answer. Prior to getting into sports, I played sports in college. That's how I got to Farmville, Virginia, which some of you may have heard of the most. I think it's the past 2 years at March Madness. The men and the women's team made a splash. They talked about our mascot there a bit. At the time, I didn't know sports analytics was a thing. So I majored in business, loved my econometrics course, and landed a job in the oil and gas industry. I don't know how many people have ever worked in that, but it is not the most interesting. All right, nice, we got one. We were selling sand, so the data was fun in that it was data. Everything else, not so good. The company was amazing, but I wasn't really, I was missing that competitive edge from sports. So I decided to go back to school and get my degree in business analytics from Duke. They had a brand new 10-month program. It would teach you how to code, and I did not know how to do that at all. So it was a horrible, beautiful 10 months of, not knowing what I was doing every day, but eventually made it into the sports world from there. So while I originally wanted to impact the front office, similar to the movie Moneyball, or for readers, Michael Lewis's book, and I wanted to be Jonah Hill, and I wanted to get in there and help win a ring, just like Bill James had done. I never ended up doing that, or at least not yet. I ended up landing in the business side of things, dealing with ticketing, which is what we're going to talk about. And while I'm not going to share any of the team's data specifically for privacy issues, these are some of the teams that we have built logistic regressions for to help predict retention. So without further ado, we'll get into the good stuff. I'm sure you've seen a version of this slide throughout the conference or at some point in your life. I know usually it's a circle because it's an iterative process, but for now, this is going to serve as our agenda slide, and we're going to walk through the 6 or so data science steps and go through how we use logistic regression and R in general in the sports industry to get season ticket members coming back. So the first step in any project is obviously to get business buy-in. If you could be the best data scientist in the world, you come in, you say, here's the coolest model I just learned how to build. I'm going to spend 2 months doing that, and it could fall flat if no one cares about it and it doesn't impact the bottom line. Sadly, we've had a few projects do this when we thought scraping Reddit would be fun, but it didn't really add a lot of business value. So cool project, never earned $1 to what I can tell. But from now, once we get once we understand that sports teams are just businesses, they want to make money too, we always know that's the first step. So obviously they make money a lot of different ways. For us, it was through ticketing. That's how we could impact it as the ticket analytics team. And how many people are a season ticket member at any sports team? Anyone? No one likes sports? Have you gone to games at least? All right, okay, good. So you're still a little valuable to the team, but the season ticket members are really, really valuable because they are the people who are going to buy a ticket before free agency happens, before players decide they want to leave for a different team, before people get injured, before they know the competition schedule, all these things. They are already bought in as fans, and we want to have at least half of our venue filled with those people, I would say. I'm risk averse, so I would love that to be 80%, but different leaders have different ideas. So we want to make money, we want to do it through season ticket holders, and we all know that acquiring a customer costs a lot more, apparently 5 times more. I didn't know that until preparing for this, than it does to keep a customer. So we typically aim for about an 80% retention rate, but that could vary depending on your leaders or where you're at. So let's assume this is what we're aiming for with our business problem. Now we get to go collect the data, which, as everyone here knows, this takes the longest amount of time. And this is typically where you lose a lot of higher up buy-in because they don't understand why it takes 3 weeks to collect 10 pieces of data, but everyone here knows exactly why that happens. So if you're in a time crunch, and especially in sports, but I think this applies to pretty much any retention model, there are 2 key things that show a customer is going to come back. Have they been here a long time? Are they loyal with us? Have they seen the ups and downs? Kind of like a marriage, I guess. They see it all, and they still decide to come back. But then also, are they using the product? So for tickets, it's, am I attending the game? Am I selling it to a friend? Am I giving it to my barber so I get free haircuts? Whatever it is, are you using it? Or are you wasting the ticket, which shows us that you likely will not come back? But a couple other things that are really fun, like demographic details. Everyone thinks that would be so cool to see, oh, are men more likely to renew versus women? But the problem with that is it takes a lot of money and time to get demographic details a lot of times. And the joke I always use is that my good friend was a woman in her 20s, and it said she was an 80-year-old man. So we're not even close with a lot of the data that we're collecting in that. So can be useful, especially zip codes I found are really great, but also not necessarily worth the time or money in a lot of the models that we're building. Obviously, ticket details, and this is where the human piece is always going to be valuable, in my opinion, because I know that maybe this seat is the most expensive because you actually get sweat on by the players, but over here you don't because the tunnel is the other way, or something like that, that type of business detail. Okay, so we get the data. It's taken us 3 weeks. Everyone's mad, but now we get to go prepare the data, and that's where all the R folks here. I hear the founder of dplyr, the creator of Tidyverse, is somewhere here, so thank you for that. You've saved me so much time over my life. We won't get into all the details with this, but basically, the thing I always tell people is if you think you can do clean dates data quickly, just think again. Just assume it's always going to take you a day, because it will. And I've had so many data scientists say, oh, I spent 3 days on this, and I only budgeted 2. I'm like, what do we talk about? You got to have a lot of time for dates. This just makes your life a bit easier for what I've done. Obviously, there are a million things you have to do to prepare the data. But this, I think, is a more fun thing to look at. And it's basically, first of all, this is just a 2 circles slide, so I didn't even have to build anything or create fake data. So thank you for 2 circles. But this is generally what we look at when we're doing EDA, right? We see, okay, we have a relatively even split between male and female, both year over year and within each year. Okay, we feel good about that. Income, we bucketed, we feel good. But then, when you see this, you might think, okay, age and location, maybe I want to bucket these kind of longer left tails to make it a bit more useful in the model and to tell a better story. And so, in my opinion, if you only have time to do EDA, I still think this carries a ton of value with a lot of leaders because every company has data, obviously. A lot of companies aren't using it properly or don't know this level, and you can look like a rock star if you just show up with this one day. But luckily, we are building the model, so we're going to talk about that. I already did the spoiler that it is a logistic regression that we're going to be going through. So that's my personal favorite. It's what I've used at most companies I've been at. But we also obviously test other things. For me, logistic regression makes the most sense because it's easy to explain. So a lot of times we sit down with sales leaders and we say, what do you think is impacting your retention rates? Why do you think they're down? Whatever it is. They give us a bunch of ideas. We go collect the data, and then we put it in the model. And one great example we use is text messages. So one year we started texting people at one of the teams, and it became one of the most significant variables in the data set. And this is a great example of why you can't always trust what you're seeing, because we essentially had a great renewal rate one year and a really bad one the year before that. And it just happened to be the year we started texting people. So when we were testing the model and training it, it had, if you text one person, they have a 100% likelihood to renew, which we all know is not accurate, and probably is the reverse if you text them too many times. So that's why I really like logistic regression. You get to show it to people and sales leaders and say, all right, here are all your ideas. Here's which ones positively impact, negatively, or not at all. Obviously, you can use decision tree as well. And they can have some fun visualizations. Pretty easy to use if you're in a crunch. You can take both, obviously, numeric and categorical. And then k-nearest neighbors is great if you work for a team that is not very good. So it keeps your data balanced, or your data is already balanced, right? About half our people are coming back and the other half are not. Bad news for the bottom line and the front office and everything. Great news from a data perspective. I don't have to do any changing. It's already balanced. That's great. Other teams, like with the greatest quarterback of all time, a lot of people say they did not have balanced data. People couldn't wait to renew there. So we could not use k-nearest neighbors in that situation. So once we agreed on logistic, obviously you have to pick which type of outcome you're going to go with. Is it just a yes, they renewed, or no, they didn't? Or is it a bit more fun where it says, okay, they renewed, but their seats are better value, or they're sitting closer, or they bought another game, or whatever it is. And that's where it gets a lot of fun. Like, we always start with the churn model. Did they renew or not? You can define renew however you want in that situation. But here is where we've really had a lot of value for the sales leaders, because people love if you come to them and you say, hey, this person is likely to renew. But also, if you push them a little bit, they're probably going to buy better seats, or they're probably going to add another game, or whatever it is. And then that's easy revenue for the sales rep who's selling it, easy money for them, and they love you, and you're a rock star in the office. Variable selection, I use Lasso a lot. I always want to use interactions. I never find that they are as accurate as you want them to be. Obviously, a bit tougher to explain, so I've never actually put that into practice. And then obviously, train and test your data. I use k-fold cross-validation to do that. Okay, evaluating the model, obviously we do that, so we have out of sample accuracy. You could come with all kinds of, the AUC score and the ROC curve. I like to do sensitivity test, because I think this visualization is easy to follow, if it will. Obviously, if your model is working, you have a true positive, true negative, everything's great. You knew they were gonna not renew and they didn't. Down in the bottom left, I just call that like a fun little treat. So we thought they weren't gonna renew, and then they did. The sales rep looks good because maybe they did something to make it happen. We don't know, not too much to worry about. The false positive, and I know this is different for obviously medical data. You would much rather have a false positive than a false negative, I imagine. But in sports, the false positive is kind of the worst, because we didn't really give them as much time or attention as maybe we should have. And as a result, now they did not renew. So any chance I can, I try to avoid that. And I don't typically go saying, oh, our AUC score was 0.7, because my boss would say, that sounds terrible. I don't know, what that means, or that's not applicable to me, where this kind of is. Okay, and then last step, deploying the model. So typically in sports, I know this will make a lot of data people cringe, but we do not retrain the model daily. We just don't have the data coming in every day. Honestly, I used to just run it once a year. At the beginning of the year, we'd say, okay, we think this will be your renewal rate. At the end of the year, we'd say, okay, this is what it was. Let's do it again, and we'll give it to you next year. But I just recently worked with a great sales leader who had this idea, and he said, okay, I want to see the model if the person attended 0 games. And as we know, attendance is one of the biggest drivers in the decision to renew. And so there was a data point that had, if they did everything the same, they had the same seats, they had the same tenure, but they never went to a game this year, what's their likelihood to renew? Let's do the same thing, rerun it if they attended all the games or they used all the tickets. And then after each game, we're going to run it and see where they fall on that given day, so that a sales leader could show up, or a sales rep could show up on a Monday after a Sunday game and say, okay, here's all my clients. They could filter for their own name. And this is obviously not the real Tableau dashboard, but it is a version of what we had. And they could filter and see, do I want to spend my time on season ticket member A, who actually has a little bit higher likelihood to renew right now, but they didn't, at best, they're still below a 50%, which depends what you use to say if it's going to be, if it's above 50%, we assume they renew, or whatever you pick. That's still not great odds. But maybe this second person who, even though right now they only have a 5% likelihood to renew, they just maybe missed the first 2 games, they were sick or traveling or whatever. Maybe it's worth me talking to this person, because if I can get them to come to more events, they have a much higher likelihood of renewal. So I never thought of it like this, but it was probably one of the best ways that we were ever able to get a model into production. And again, a lot of you will cringe at what we called in production. It was basically, we wrote a table in the warehouse, we called that through an automated R to get the view, and then put that new data in the model, spit out a table, connected Tableau to the table. So it worked quick, it worked like that, but it wasn't as automated as maybe some things would be, but it did the job, and all the sales leaders started to get to know our team after we did a project like this. So this is what you would maybe give ownership, or this is what you would give the sales leader who is less involved and maybe doesn't care as much about, all right, did you use the model or the variables I asked? Did you, wanting to be more involved? You could just show this, and it would honestly probably get you a raise and make you look really good if this is the case. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, and sometimes retention goes down, and even though it's not your fault, you have to explain why that is. So this is just an example of a visualization I really liked. And that is it from me. So sorry I kind of motored through that, but obviously I'll be around the rest of the day. If you have any questions or want to talk sports, I would love to do that with all of you. So thank you.